If I told you 3 weeks ago that Luke Fickell would still be the head coach at Wisconsin and James Franklin would be gone from Penn State, you would have thought a scandal, and I mean a scandal, had struck in State College. And yet here we sit. But that doesn't negate the fact that things are bad at Wisconsin. And I don't expect them to get any better really anytime soon. The Badgers have fallen under Luke Fickell, and I can't understand why. But at the time of Luke Fickell's hiring, I thought, oh boy, look out for the Badgers because he's going to turn them into a juggernaut. Better than what Brett Bielema had them at, better than what Paul Chryst had them at, better than perhaps even what Barry Alvarez ever had them at. I thought that Wisconsin was going to be a usual Big Ten title contender under Luke Fickell with a spectacular defense and an offense that was going to grind you down, ground and pound, difficult to get off the field. And none of that has happened. They tried to implement an air raid offense, which at Wisconsin is sort of like putting Kate Upton in an Amish dress. Just that ain't right. In the last 4 games, all losses, their high is 14 points. They've given up 38, 27, 24, and 37. Got blanked 37-0 against Iowa on homecoming last Saturday. And congratulations, your next 2 are against Ohio State and at Oregon, leading into the bye. I think Luke Fickell needs to win either one of those games to still be the head coach when the Badgers play Washington on Saturday, November 8th. But the issues aren't going to just simply be rectified by firing Luke Fickell. Wisconsin has fallen on hard times. Can they get back up? And this is what I've talked about in the last couple of days with James Franklin getting fired or other coaches maybe being on the hot seat of Wisconsin decided that Paul Chryst wasn't good enough, that what they were producing under him was not going to be acceptable long-term, and thus made the decision to fire him after the 2022 season. I guess not even after the 2022 season, during the 2022 season. Listen to these records and tell me that Wisconsin wouldn't take them right this second. 10-2, tied for second in the Big Ten West. 11-3, won the Big Ten West, won the Cotton Bowl. 13-1, won the Big Ten West, won the Orange Bowl. 8-5, tied for second in the Big Ten West. 10-4, tied for first in the Big Ten West, lost the Rose Bowl. COVID, 4-3. 9-4 in 2021, tied for second in the Big Ten West. 2-3 in 2022, got run. 3 times you play in the Big Ten championship game from 2015 to 2020, from 2015 to 2019. 3 out of 4 years from 2016 to 2019, you play the Big Ten championship game. You think Wisconsin would trade that today for what they have now? Yeah, probably. And that's what I speak of when I say everybody is kind of one bad decision, whether it's firing somebody that didn't deserve fired, or holding on to somebody a little bit too long, away from irrelevance. Because you know who nobody's talking about today other than me is Wisconsin football, because Luke Fickell has made them irrelevant, and I never would have guessed that in the slightest. Paul Chryst was 67-26 as the head coach of the Badgers. And they decided, we can do better than that. And now here you are, wondering who you are and what you are. Because if Wisconsin was to fire Luke Fickell and get their name in the carousel of, hey, sure would be great to be a primo destination for whatever hot commodity you would like to pick. It's behind Penn State in the pecking order. Might be above Oklahoma State and Virginia Tech. Is it above UCLA? Is it above Stanford? I don't know. And that's a hell of a spot for Wisconsin football to be in. I don't think this is one of those times where, because I think this is true of some programs where they were really good for a long time, and then a legendary coach steps aside and magically they're not as good as they once were. For instance, Kansas State was statistically the worst college football program, not the worst Power 4 football program, the worst college football program until Bill Snyder got there and got their ass in gear. And then he retired, and they brought in Ron Prince, and they sucked. They brought back Bill Snyder, and they were good again. And Chris Kleiman has done a pretty good job at Kansas State, but he's not on Bill Snyder's level. And so I think people can get lulled into this sense of, well, this is who we are, this is what we should be, this is what our expectations should be. And sometimes that's not in line with reality. I don't think this is one of those times at Wisconsin, because Barry Alvarez took over a bad Wisconsin program, turned it into a good Wisconsin program, and then Brett Bielema had success. Paul Chryst had success. This isn't one of those times where somebody just worked magic. Wisconsin has some things going for it. Now, there are some downturns too. Don't get me wrong. Academic standards are pretty high. Recruiting base is not great. But there have been people who have shown you how to win and the pathway to being successful, what that looks like for the Badgers. And I thought, as I told you, that Luke Fickell was going to turn them into like a, oh, crap, we've got to play Wisconsin on Saturday. Ohio State and Wisconsin used to be a game that every Buckeye fan, when they saw it on the schedule, would go, that's a game I have to tune in and watch, because it's not going to be a gimme. It's not going to be easy. That's going to be an entertaining football game. There is a very good chance we might lose that game. Now, it is a game that if there was a fall wedding on Saturday, you'd be like, yeah, it's fine. We can skip watching the Ohio State game. They're playing Wisconsin. And that's a hell of a spot to be in. You throw that with, they play Ohio State on Saturday at home and then travel to Oregon, followed by the bye week. It sure feels like a recipe for them to say, hey, Luke, appreciate your time here. That's all, folks. But I don't know who Wisconsin fans could pound the table for. James Franklin got fired, and Kurt Signetti and Matt Rule immediately came off the tongue. Sam Pittman gets fired at Arkansas, and the fans are clamoring, give me John Gruden or give me death. Is there a person like that for Wisconsin? I don't know. I think it would be ignorant to pretend like I did know. Perhaps Jim Leonard? Other than that, who are Badger fans saying, this is going to be the guy to resurrect our program? I don't know that it feels like there is some hotshot coach in the MAC. I don't know that it feels like there is somebody with ties to the program other than like Dave Aranda, who was the defensive coordinator there for a long time. But is he going to leave Baylor for Wisconsin? I don't know. Is he going to move the needle for Wisconsin fans? I don't know. Pretty much the worst feeling you could have as a college football fan base is apathy. And I think that's where Badger fans are right now. And I think that stinks, because I think that Wisconsin could be in that same camp as not necessarily, and they played at this level for a while with the Ohio State, Michigans, Oregons, probably USC's of the world in the Big Ten, but at least as the top dog of the Penn States, Michigan States, sporadically Northwesterns, Iowas, etc., where you could be ranked in the top 10. You could be ranked in the between 10 and 25, 12 and 25, and nobody bats an eye because that's kind of your rightful place. That the Badgers are very far from that right now, and to tell you the truth, I don't know how they get back there other than playing pretty much exactly the style I thought that Luke Fickell would have the Badgers playing, and never really has. I wonder how and if Wisconsin can get this turned around, or if they are in their Nebraska from the 10 years before they hired Bo Pelini and the 10 years after they fired Bo Pelini, or Tennessee, or whatever, Alabama with Mike Shula. And everybody does this pretty much outside of Ohio State. Notre Dame even had their Charlie Weiss and Tyrone Willingham. Can Wisconsin right the ship with somebody else? I think so, but who the perfect person is to lead that program, not if, but when Luke Fickell gets fired, I don't know. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about who that is and should be to return the Badgers to glory. Because I just I frankly don't have that answer. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you get all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you are listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.